Hi there. Welcome to session 2 of the IDLC Transform Year. This is option 3. In option 3, we're going to talk about how you are going to work in your PD choice with creating a screencast or some kind of similar video that people can do either at one time or asynchronously. We want you to have the option of doing something where you're not standing up in front of people, but you're still building that PD opportunity for people to learn from what you've learned. So what we want you to do is think about the PD choice that you're going to do and then start building the screencast. And you'll notice that this screencast looks a little bit different than the ones that I normally do. I originally thought about making a screencast that wasn't edited, but I didn't really want to go into a lot of non-examples. I'd rather show you what I do, and hopefully that will help you build the best screencast that you can. When I'm building a screencast for teachers, I start with a Google Slides presentation, and I do that because I am able to use the slide part, the sort of pretty part, for you to see. So I put certain things on there that I want to draw your attention to. I put links, I put shortened URLs, I put images. But in slides, there's also the part down at the bottom, the speaker notes down here. That's where I put the notes for me. So that's a good way of running this so that I can see what I want you to see, but I can also make sure that I'm remembering the things that I need to tell you. This can work really well if you have 2 devices. So I do the screencast on my Chromebook or on my computer, and then I put the same slides presentation on another device. So whether I have an iPad or a Chromebook or my phone, I can see those speaker notes. So I use that to make sure that I'm hitting all those same points that I want you to understand. So when you're doing this, that's one way you can do it. You can do it however you want. Whatever's going to work best for you is the way that you should do this. I'm just showing you the way that I typically do this. If you're walking through an instructional tool, you're going to want to make sure that you also pull up the instructional tool and walk teachers through it. Make sure they understand how they're going to use it, and especially how they're going to use it instructionally. If I were doing this and I were wanted to start it with a base, I would use a slides presentation like I have here, and I would also use Screencastify. Screencastify is a great option for you to use. It's free. It's super easy to use. If you don't have a Chromebook, that's okay. It works on your computer too. It runs right out of Chrome. If you have questions with how to use Screencastify, please feel free to touch base with your coach. They'd be happy to help you. You can also use any other screencasting app. There are lots of them. Screencastify is just one that a lot of people tend to use. One other thing to keep in mind, you're going to want to make sure that there's an accountability piece in your screencast or video or whatever you choose to do. And some of the things that I use when I'm doing this are listed down here, but there are things like using collaborative Google Slides, using Padlets. You can use drawings as long as people aren't going to be using it on an iPad, because Google Drawings don't work on iPad. You can use forms. There's a lot of different tools that you can use. And I bring that up because it's important to remember that just because you're doing a screencast doesn't mean you don't need to have some sort of interactive opportunity for your learners. You don't want them to just sit and get your screencast, even though they technically will be sitting and getting your screencast. We want there to be the same reflection, the same opportunities for them to interact with people who are doing the same thing. It's just going to look a little bit different. And it'll also look different whether you're doing a session where people have to join it at a specific time, or if you're doing an asynchronous session. And some people will ask, well, what does asynchronous mean? And what you're doing right now is asynchronous. So I'm recording this screencast on a random Tuesday. It doesn't mean that you need to be here on this Tuesday in order to make the learning happen. You can watch it anytime you want to. That's what asynchronous means. This is the same slide that's in all of the options, and it really gets at why we want you to be doing this. We want you to become a leader in our district. That's really the big push for this last year, this Transform year, is really getting you to build your repertoire, build capacity in your classroom, and really become the leader not only in your school, but in our district. We want you to get your name and your face out there to teachers and to principals, and especially when you're doing a screencast PD like this, it can go beyond your teachers, it can go beyond your principal, and it can go beyond our district. This is something that you can share with people from other districts. If you get into social media, you can post it on Twitter and let other districts and other teachers and other places around the world benefit from the learning and the experience and the experimenting that you've done. We also think it's important for you to add professional development and implementation. So not just planning it, but carrying it out to your resume. And that's a great resume builder if you decide to move on from your classroom or take on a lead teacher role or any other number of things that you might need more opportunities in your resume for. And we also finally, and probably most importantly, we want you to work on building that confidence in yourself. So many teachers think that just because they are awesome teachers in their classroom, they can't do anything outside their classroom. And we really want you to see that potential that we see in you, in yourself. So all those awesome things that make you a wonderful teacher are things that make you a wonderful leader for educators too. So we want you to make sure that you feel good about yourself and that you understand that you have the potential to do this and so much more. So when you're thinking about your screencast, we want you to make sure that you're working with your coach. That's why your coach is there. So you're going to think about what you're going to do for your professional development opportunity. And if you're struggling with ideas, there are some in here and your coach can certainly provide some. But we want you to make sure that you have all of your bases covered before you start working on your screencast. Really have an idea of what you want to do. And I talked about this in the initial video, but if you're sort of at a loss right now, it's a good time to pick something because you have plenty of time to try it in your classroom and really understand its functions, how it's going to work, and what the benefit is for other teachers. Since you're in a sort of nice position of choosing to do a screencast, you can really wait. You can do it when you need to do it, and you don't have to worry about any other person's schedule. You don't have to schedule it so that teachers can attend. You can do it however you want. The only thing you want to keep in mind is that you need to make sure that you have people to take part in your screencast and give you that follow-up on your screencast. So part of your work that you're going to turn in is not only the screencast and any sort of support documents that you make, but also the follow-up or the accountability piece that the participants have done. So we want to see evidence that people have actually benefited from what you're doing. Since the other sessions are live sessions, so people will actually be there and be working with you, it's important that you check on that accountability piece and see what people have done, see what results there are from it, and we want to see those same results too. So if you have questions about that, please reach out to your coach, but that's work that we want to see from you, and it's in the checklist that I'll get to next. So in your implementation requirements, they're a little bit different than some of the other ones. The length can be anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. If it goes a little bit longer than 20 minutes, that's all right. But something you want to keep in mind is that the people are going to be sitting at their computer and you don't want them to get sidetracked doing something else, whether it's legitimate work or on Facebook. So you want to keep it engaging and short enough that they can reasonably get it done and they still feel good about the time that they're putting into this. Just like the other ones, we want you to put an emphasis on the 4 C's, and the 4 C's is really the key in part of the profile of an SC grad. That's why that's there. So we really want you to look at that profile of SC grad and see where are your connection points? Where can you take something from that and work that into your screencast? We want it to be one new thing, so whether it's a brand new tool or an older tool in a new way, we want it to be something new and relatively innovative for people that are taking part in your screencast. We also want there to be an instructional component. The whole point of what we're doing is to improve instruction, so that's really a critical issue. When we're looking next, we want to make sure that there's parts where teachers can reflect. So how can teachers use this with their kids tomorrow? And that can be in the form of an exit ticket, that can be in any sort of accountability piece, it can be something where they're collaborating together, but we really want some reflection for our teachers. We also want you to make sure that you're working on this with your coach. Should not be something that you're working on just by yourself. If you're good and you feel great about what you're doing and you have no problem screencasting, that's fine. Just please make sure you run your plan by your coach so that they know what you're doing, because they need to know what's going on with you as well. We also need to make sure, as I said before, that you are sharing your accountability both exit ticket and reflection pieces with your coach. So make sure that that work that is being done by the people who take part in your lesson, that work is coming back to your coach. So not only does your coach need that, but it's going to get turned in on Google Classroom before January 18th as well. Finally, when we're talking about tips for success for this option, language is particularly important in this one. A lot of teachers, and I'm included in that, relied on body language and you rely on relationship to be really, really great in the classroom. And something you have to think about is that you don't have that when you are doing a screencast. It's a one-way street. So you can't interact with your participants in the same way, and they can't interact with you because you have already recorded the screencast. So you have to really think long and hard about your language, and that's why I'm showing you what I put in these notes down at the bottom. So these can get as specific or as inspecific as you need them to get, but really give yourself those points that you want to make sure that you hit on so that you're not stumbling around for words and trying to remember, because it ends up taking a lot more time when you have to re-record 3 or 4 times. Will you have to re-record? Probably. Most people do. I usually record 2 or 3 times before I get something that I feel comfortable sharing with people. But having a script and having that list there to fall back on really helps, and it can make it a lot easier to make it through your screencast. If there's parts where you forget a word or you go back around once or twice and it's not really that big of a deal, that's fine. You don't have to re-record that. I did it on the last slide once or twice. If it's something where you're completely messing up and the words don't make sense, just re-record. It makes the result a lot more professional seeming. So we talked about there being a script. You want to make sure that you definitely have a script, and you can write it word for word. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I use the method that I'm showing you here, just having bulleted list. For me, this screencast is a lot easier for me to talk about because I do a lot of screencast creation. So I just have points that I want to make sure that I remember. I don't necessarily need the entire script written out. If I'm screencasting a tool, I oftentimes will write the script exactly out the way that I'm going to say it. You want to make sure you also have a positive attitude. So there are a lot of challenges in being a teacher, and there are a lot of challenges in new technology tools. We want you to make sure that you're representing what you're doing in a positive way, because, again, especially with a screencast, if it gets to be sort of unpleasant or boring or something that people don't want to watch, they're just not going to watch it. They're going to press stop. They're going to close the window. They're going to do something else. So you have to make that engagement piece really, really critical, really, really important, and really, really profound in here. We want to make sure that your tech is already prepped. You understand how to use Screencastify or whatever tool you're using to record your screencast. We want you to make sure that you understand how your computer works, how all of these pieces are going to fit together, and especially how the tool that you're presenting on works and how it works instructionally. We want you to make sure that you practice ahead of time. Make sure you practice with the screencasting tool and with your script. Know what you're going to say before you say it. And that leads into editing. You might have to do some editing on here if there are parts that you didn't get through the way you wanted it to, or maybe you have to change something up. Make sure that you know how to edit and what options you have for editing. Please make a plan with your coach and use your coach as the support that they are. I'm sure you're going to do a great job, and if you have questions, please reach out to, again, your coach or to your session leader.